Hello, third graders. Welcome to our lesson today. We are going to be talking about classifying plants. So we have already learned about the different structures of plants, how they have roots, stems, leaves, flowers, fruits. We talked also about how some plants have cones in order to make their seeds or to make a new plant. So this week we're going to talk about how do scientists classify or group plants, just like when we talked about classifying animals. So today you're going to need your reading in your plant section, and we are going to be on the classifying plants in our reading packet, and that happens to be on page 72. So grab your reading, open that up to page 72. And then we also are going to be using our questions, and we're going to be on the classifying plants section in our questions, which happens to be on page 84. So make sure you have both of those ready, and then we'll get started. We're going to start like we do every time by filling in those true-false questions before we learn. So getting our brain thinking. I'm in the classifying plants section on page 84 in my reading or in my question packet under the introduction. In the before column, remember, put the word true or the word false, and it is okay if you don't know. Sentence 1 says, scientists classify plants by looking at the plant's structures. Do you think that's true or false? And remember, plant structures means roots, stems, leaves, flowers. So scientists classify plants by looking at the plant structures. Is that true or false? And our second sentence today says, one way to classify plants is by the habitat that the plant grows in. Habitat means the area that they grow. So do you think that is true or false? One way to classify plants is by the habitat that plants grow in. All right, you should have your before questions filled in. Let's go ahead and dive into our reading lesson. Again, I'm in my reading packet under classifying plants on page 72. There are about 300,000 different types of plants living in the world today. Think about all the different types. Scientists classify plants in order to study them. To classify means to put into groups. Plants in the same group have similar characteristics or traits. So this should kind of sound familiar. When we did animals, we classified animals based on their characteristics or traits. All mammals had the same characteristics or traits. Birds, fish, reptiles, amphibians, they were all grouped or classified by their traits. The same thing happens with plants. So here are some pictures of lots of different plants. You could probably look at some of these and think of the ways that they're classified, looking at the shape of the petals, looking at the colors, looking at the leaves. So let's dive in a little bit more about plants. Plants can be classified in many different ways. Gardeners may classify plants by whether they grow in the sun or in the shade. Farmers may classify plants by the season that the crops ripen or grow in. Ripen was one of our vocabulary words. Landscapers may classify plants by whether they are trees, shrubs, vines, or flowers. Other people may be interested in knowing if the plant grows in the desert, or in the rainforest, or in the Arctic. So let's look a little bit more closely at why these different groups of people look at plants differently. Here is sun plants and shade plants. So the plants on the left prefer to grow in the bright sunshine, where the plants on the right prefer to grow in shady spots. Who do you think would classify the plants by sun and shade? Gardeners would. They want to make sure when they're planting these in their garden that they put them in the appropriate spot. If you put a shade plant in too much sun, it's going to burn out and die. If you put a sun plant in too much shade, it's not going to get enough sun to make the food through photosynthesis and therefore will not survive. So a gardener wants to know what kind of plant it is. Here are two other types of plants. The ones on the left grow and ripen in the winter, and the plants on the right grow and ripen in the summer. Some are fruits and some are vegetables. Some are roots, some are stems, some are leaves. You should be noticing some of that from our plant structures discussion. Who would classify plants by winter and summer? Farmers. Farmers need to know when does the plant grow and ripen so they know when to pick the crop. They don't want to plant a summer plant and think that it's going to grow and be harvested in the winter. It's not going to survive. So they have to know when does the plant need to be picked and when is it going to ripen in order to plant them appropriately for the time of the year. Here's another set of plants. The plants on the left are shrubs, and the plants on the right are vines, meaning that they grow on long, thin, little stems called vines. Someone who might want to know about these might be a landscaper. If someone says to them, we would like to have plants that are going to grow on our wooden posts of our patio like these, they would want to plant a vine. Where if someone wants maybe some protection from their neighbors or some covering, you would want to plant a shrub. So someone who is a landscaper would need to know about the type of plant and how to take care of the plant based off of its classification. You trim a shrub a lot differently than you trim a vine. Here's another way we classify plants. Where are they living? The habitat on the left would be the desert, so you can see lots of cactus-looking plants with their needles that are their leaves, versus the rainforest type of plants that have bigger leaves that are going to grow in that environment. If I lived in a very moist, wet environment like Florida, I'm not going to want to plant a desert plant because it would get too much water. Another way we might look at classifying plants is, do they have flowers or do they make cones? And we've talked about both flowers and cones produce seeds that allow the plant to make a new plant or reproduce. But these are different ways we might classify them. All the plants on the left make flowers, where the plants on the right all make a type of a cone. Scientists look at plant structures in order to classify them. That was one of our true-false questions. Do they look at plant structures? Yes. Scientists classify plants by the shape of their leaves. Are they small? Are they long? Are they broad? Are they flat? Are they needle-like? By the kind of stem they have. Are they a woody stem? Are they a herbaceous stem? Are they long like a vine? Or by the kind of roots do they have? We talked about our fibrous roots and our tap roots. Scientists also classify plants by whether they use flowers, cones, or spores to reproduce. And we've talked about those three things. So based off of our information today, you should be able to go back and answer your true-false questions. Do we classify by looking at plant structures? Absolutely. Do we look about where they live in their habitat? Yes. Gardeners, farmers, scientists, they all look at them differently depending on the use of the plant. Next time we come together, we're going to talk about flowering plants.